Another way to do that is to tease players. Nintendo, they do that a lot, and they're very efficient in this. So for example, at some point in Zelda, you're gonna see some poles, like the wooden poles, and you start seeing them, and they out of nowhere, like, what is this? That's new. I never see that, and never seen that before. And the players are starting to wonder, what do we do with this? And sometimes maybe you would see a pole next to an area that you can't get to, or maybe there's this chest there. And so that's teasing you. How do I get there? Because I want the chest, and there's something with the pole. How do we use that? So this is teasing you to, there's a new lock, and then it's wanting you to get the key to that lock. And not too long after, players are rewarded for exploration, or after killing an enemy, the grappling hook. And this is when they immediately say, oh, okay, so this is how I get to those areas before. So it looks like this. So that's also a great way to teach players. It's, instead of giving players a new thing, like the grappling hook, you first introduce a lock. There's a pole next to a chest, and players are like, I want to get there. I don't know why. And it has to do with these poles. How do I use that? And then you give them as a reward the grappling hook. And so then you give them the key to unlock their situation. So that's a great way, by teasing curiosity, to make learning a new mechanic or a new system or a new weapon, a new item meaningfully. Another way to do that is by showing how people could get. So for example, the Fortnite HUD between March 2015 and March 2016, there was a lot of iteration on it. And the things that were really efficient is we show, what you use to harvest, what you use as weapons, what is your gadgets, and what are your abilities. And you also see how many gadgets you can use and how many abilities you can use. So the first time you get a gadget, then you see in the HUD that you actually could use a second one. And so that's teasing you on how do I get more gadgets? And so that's helping players to anticipate what they can get in the game. And so once they get it, they already have a good mental model of what they can do with it. So it's really important if you want players to learn more efficiently what they can do with a new thing, that they are teased beforehand on, that's it's coming, and that's can be just simply reflected in the HUD like this. So all in all, if you want players to learn in a meaningful way, it's going to be really important to understand how to motivate them, because something meaningful is something that you're motivated to learn because you care about it, because it's going to help you do something that you care about. There are two main types of motivation in human. You have extrinsic motivations, when you are motivated to do something in order to get something else. So you're motivated to do a task because you care about the reward. Or you have intrinsic motivation. This is when you care about doing something just for the pleasure of doing it. Extrinsic motivation is going to be really important to give players clear goals and rewards. Games are typically good at that. We know that we have missions, and if we do that mission, we're going to get this reward. And if it's done well, we know that what we're going to be able to do with this reward, and that's motivating us to accomplish the mission. The best way to do that is to make sure players have short-term goals, medium-term goals, and long-term goals, and that they have clear rewards associated to these goals. Pokemon is a great example of a game that really offers clear goals to players. Intrinsic motivation is also very, very important, and sometimes it's the part that it's more delicate to accomplish. So I explained that in my previous presentation, but the theory that is the most reliable on intrinsic motivation is what we call self-determination theory, or SDT. It explains that we are more intrinsically motivated to do certain tasks or activities when these activities satisfy our needs for competence, autonomy, and relatedness. Competence is about having a sense of progression, feeling that you're gaining more skillful, or just feeling that you're progressing towards a certain goal. That also offers a great feedback on your competence. But also it's about being more skillful. So if you train yourself and then you get better, like for example, in a battle royale game, you play for the first time and you finish, I don't know, 64th. And then you play a second time and now you 32nd. And so even though you still did not win, you progressed. You feel that you're more skillful and you understand better how to play. So that's the reason why it's really important to teach players properly, so that they can have this feeling of competence, so that they can, even if they fail, even if they die, next time they will get better. And they're only going to be able to get better if they understand what's going on. And that's the reason why it's really, really important to teach them properly. Autonomy is about self-expression and meaningful choices, and maybe you can solve a problem in different ways, and you can also have different dance moves and stuff like that. And relatedness is about a relationship between humans. We are a very social species, so we care about this. And it's mainly about cooperation and competition. And actually, cooperation is even more meaningful to us than competition. And a lot of the sports game or esports games are actually team-based. You cooperate with your team and you compete with another team. So focus on cooperation and how we can meaningfully help each other out is really important. That's why RPGs, role-playing games, are very good at that, because you choose your role. So that gives you autonomy. You can choose what role you want to play. Let's say you want to play the healer. And so that makes you, in the group, you have a meaningful role to play. So that's important for relatedness. And if you heal players at the moment they need to heal, or if you resurrect them, then players are going to be happy and they're going to tell you thanks, or they're going to show appreciation on your competence. And so good role-playing games are very good at expressing these three needs: competence, autonomy, and relatedness. Okay, so these were the learning principles. Now I'm going to talk about the onboarding plan. It's going to go a bit faster because we don't have a lot of time left. But the idea is to offer the best learning curve possible to players. We want to go from the screen on the left to the screen on the right in a way that is going to be interesting and meaningful for players, and not in a way that's going to be painful. So this is the challenge. Players know that they're gonna have to learn a lot of stuff, but most of us we need it to be paced out so that we can learn one thing at a time, and it's the onboarding plan is done properly. The problem is, us as developers, we have what we call the curse of knowledge. We know our game too well. So it's going to be very difficult for us to anticipate how players are going to perceive things. So what's going to be hard for them to learn? It's really hard to anticipate, because to us, we know our game, and so we know what's important to focus on. So we go directly to the things that are important, but players don't know that. So for them, there's a lot of information at the same time, and they have to figure out what's important to be competent in the game. To make a teaching meaningful, it's really important to focus on why will players care about it first. So the idea is to put ourselves in the player's shoes and think about why is, for example, learning how to build stairs is going to be meaningful to players. Well, because in this situation, if they don't build stairs, they cannot get out. So it's always important to try to think about, why will they care at that moment in the game? And then we try to focus on how we're going to teach that. Is it going to be through learning by doing? Is it going to be through a tutorial text? And then lastly, what players are going to interact with. And in the end, when we test our game with players, we need to make sure, like through the interaction with the system, do they reach the why are they doing this? Is it really meaningful to them? Did we accomplish our goals? So this focus on the why, starting with why, as a very powerful mindset. A way that I found very efficient to do that is what I call the onboarding plan. So the idea is to sit down with the core team and to start to list all the things that players need to learn to be, good and competent in the game. And of course, you're going to end up with a huge list. So it looks like this. I know it's a bit scary, but it's a process. So it looks like that in the end. But you start by listing all the what are all the things that players need to learn. Like, for example, players need to learn how to craft, like basic crafting, or how to build, more specifically, they need to learn how to edit a door in building. So you list all the things, and then you can start to sort out what is going to be more important and when, so that you don't teach too many things at the players at the same time. By looking at your list, and then by sorting it out and what's going to come first, then you have a better idea of when it's too much. And then it's going to be really important to try to focus on the why. So why learning a certain mechanic or system is going to be meaningful to players. So this is when we need to do that shift and put ourselves in the player's shoes, so that we can try to think about, okay, at this point of the game, why will they need to learn that? And then we can define how we do that. Is it going to be learning by doing? Is it going to be contextual tutorial text, etc., etc. And then in the end, if you have a more scripted game, you can think about the narrative, how we can explain this in the story. It's always more efficient to end with the story, so that you can make sure the story is really transcending and supporting the onboarding plan, rather than start with a story and then you need to fit your onboarding plan to the story. So that's not going to be the most efficient way to teach players. So back to the notion of competence that we saw is really key for intrinsic motivation. If you want players to feel competent and to play in the game, tutorials are going to matter way more than you think. And of course, by tutorials, I mean anything that you teach players. And so it doesn't have to be a tutorial text. It's any situation that you build for players in which they learn about something. So for example, in the game Paragon, it was a MOBA. In MOBAs, we typically have different lanes, and in each lane you have the towers that are protecting your core, the core of your team. But then you need, as you go down the lane, you reach the enemy area, and so it's protected by enemy towers. And MOBA players usually know that they need to wait for the minions to get inside the tower area first, so that they can get the aggro from the tower. The towers are really powerful, so you don't want to get targeted by the tower. You let your minions get in first so that they can get the aggro from the tower, and then you can get in and start to destroy the tower. Another rule is we know that if we're inside the area of the tower, even though there are your minions there, if you start hurting an enemy hero, then the tower is going to automatically target you. So these are basic tower aggro rules that MOBA players need to learn to be able to be competent in playing MOBAs. And in Paragon, the problem is that we saw this behavior happening. So this is what we call tower diving. And even though we recruited players that were playing MOBAs, we were surprised to see so many players do this. And if they don't understand the tower aggro rules, if they don't wait for the minions to get in, and they're gonna die immediately in the beginning of the game. And of course, it's gonna take a while to respawn, because in MOBAs, you have to wait maybe 40 seconds before you respawn, time during which your enemies, if they know the game better, they're gonna stay away from towers and gonna start targeting minions, for example, so that they can level up. And so very early on in the game, there can be like a big imbalance if players don't understand the tower aggro rules. And we were seeing that sort of behavior a lot in playtest sessions month before the launch of Paragon. We determined like a top 5 UX issues, and these issues were affecting directly the sense of competence for players. So we knew that we had to fix these problems before launch, because that's typically the sort of problems if players die or fail, but they don't understand why and what happened and how to be better. This is typically when they want to stop playing and they churn. And so these top 5 UX issues that we found month before launch correlated after launch with the top 5 analytics factors impacting retention that were analyzed in the game. And the top one of these factors through analytics, it was players who are more likely to churn are players who die to towers. And we knew why. That's because they don't understand the tower aggro rules. So it's typically having that sort of mindset and understanding what it's important for players to learn and what is the most important for players to understand so that they can be more skillful in the game. If you see in playtest sessions that players have a hard time understanding that, it's a real red flag for you to really iterate on that and to start working on it. So this is an example of when we try to fix this problem afterwards. The tutorial is an afterthought, and that's typically when we do that too fast, and of course it's not going to be efficient enough. So that's the reason why it's really, really important to think about not just your game and all the systems in your game, but how you're going to teach all of that to players, and in such a way that is going to be meaningful to them and that they can be competent into playing your game. Because if you don't think about it early enough, it's very likely that you're going to have big problems after the game is launched. And if you wait until then it's going to be very hard to recover from that. Anticipate, have your onboarding plan, and then test. You can test situations very early on, like you saw the videos from Fortnite. We tested situations, and when the game was very, very early, and it doesn't matter. As long as you test the situation, even if it's not the final story, it doesn't matter. At least you know what situation is going to work and which are the ones that don't work, so that you can iterate. And then once you know what situations work, then you're ready for your story. And you're ready to put the situation at the right moment for players. And that's also very important to think about your hypothesis. Why if players don't learn about this is going to be really critical for our game. So if you do your onboarding plan, you anticipate that players need to learn this at that moment and they need to learn that at that moment. And so when you do playtest sessions, and even later on with analytics, you can verify, do players understand this at that moment? Were they able to get better at playing the game? And if not, you can prioritize that in your production cycle. So that's really important to have hypotheses when you test your game. It's not just enough to test your game at some point. You need to know why are things important and what is it you're testing, and eventually how you fix it. All right, we're reaching the end of this presentation. This is just a reminder of a game UX framework that you can use to both anticipate the usability of your game and the engageability of the game, how engaging your game is going to be about. So these are ingredients that can guide you all throughout the development of your game. And if something is going wrong, like for example, if people don't feel competent, like in the motivation section, that's a big red flag, but it might be just because of a usability problem. Maybe because players don't understand something, or something is not clear enough. So sometimes just a simple usability problem can have a big impact on players' motivation. And this is going to be the problem that you will have to prioritize fixing. So this is a way to help us fix the right problems and at the right moment. Because of course, there's so many problems to fix in a game and we cannot fix everything at the same time. So we prioritize. And anything that's going to impact players' feeling of competence or their autonomy or relatedness, or if they understand the goals and the rewards, that's going to have to have higher priority. That's it. Arigatou gozaimasu. Thank you so much for your attention. All the things that we talked about today is in my book, The Gamer's Brain, that is translated in Japanese. And I also released a new book last year. It's called The Psychology of Video Games, but it's not translated yet. Maybe one day. Thank you so much for your attention again. And of course, I'm available on Twitter if you have any questions for me. Arigatou.